Hi there. My name's Alan. I've been in radio and the music industry for many, many years. Started off as a disc jockey, worked as a foreign correspondent in London, came back and actually worked for the William Morris Agency when I graduated college. But I'm a collector, I am a fan, and I'm grateful enough that a lot of the people that I enjoy so much have become friends of mine over the years.
And Alan, tell me about like who your favorite artists growing up that you kind of got you into music and made you kind of fall in love with just becoming a music fan and working in the industry. And how did you know that this is something you want to do, pursue in your life?
When I was a young kid, I discovered my brother's record collection in the patio of my parents' home. And he hates to this day that I took it. But I learned from that to become a huge fan of the Beatles. And then as I started to get more involved, I went to a concert by Christopher Cross, and it was at a park in Charlotte, and I heard the Gap Band for the first time playing on a ride that was just spinning people around. So I discovered R&B and hip hop and everything else. And so along the way, I become a big fan of country music, rock and roll, and R&B and hip hop, and made a lot of friends in all of those. As part of that, I also had the chance to work with folks like Lee Greenwood, Leon Russell, Merle Haggard. In fact, I took a lot of photos of Merle Haggard thanks to his tour manager. And as a result, I have photos in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, numerous laminated passes, and they also introduced me to a lot of great people like oh, um, Big and Rich and Les Paul.
And I'm curious, are you a musician yourself? It's funny, I played the saxophone starting fourth grade, and I still play a little bit now, but I played it all through fourth grade through college, and I kind of fell in love with music as well, and have had great opportunities from sax, and then I picked up guitar a little bit. So I'm curious, like, do you play any instruments, and what's your favorite instrument?
As a college kid, I ran into an up and coming band backstage that offered me a spot to be on the road with them, which scared the daylights out of my mom because she wanted me to stay in college. And oh my God, my kid can't become a musician. The band went on to be known as The Deal, which included Ellie Reed and Babyface. I think I would have been okay.
Gotcha. And you speaking of Les Paul, let's get into the guitar, right? I mean, Les Paul, probably one of the most, if not the most important, like innovators of rock music, right? And inventing what was it called? The log originally, I think, like his first ever guitar or something. Am I close to that? Like, talk to me about Les Paul and his just importance in the rock and roll space.
There's a lot of people I've had a chance to meet that have made a real difference in the industry. The overall sound of so many songs would not be the same had it not been for Les Paul. I mean, that's obviously somebody that had an influence, even back to the Beatles and the Beach Boys and everything else, and the creation of, by far one of the best guitars that Gibson puts out, called the Les Paul. Um, it's when you go back and especially watch now the archived video of him playing along with folks that are younger, look to his generations, and you see them playing side by side, from vocalizers, from I mean, this guy did everything from the studio down to the guitar and had just an amazing effect on our industry. And it wouldn't be as good without him.
Definitely agree. Definitely agree. I mean, I've never owned a Les Paul. Like I have like one of my first ever electric guitar was like one of the knockoff. It was Gibson, but it wasn't a true Les Paul. It was like one of those beginner ones. It was blue, and I started to kind of fall in love with guitar with that. So definitely know what you're saying there. And just curious, so this Les Paul we have in the auction, talk to me a little about the story of, how it's gotten signed, this specific model. Tell me everything about this that makes it truly a special one of a kind item.
So one of the nice things that I'm very grateful about with my career and with my friends is I had a chance to get to be friendly with a lot of the folks around Merle Haggard, and eventually became friends with Merle. There was one day when they were in Los Angeles, and they had an issue they needed to get fixed. So I helped bring Merle Haggard down to Guitar Center on Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. And they had some gear looked out, and actually one of the funny things while we were there, they handed him a custom guitar that was part of their vintage collection in the back, and he picked it up and started playing with it, handed it back to him, and told him which fret was broken. And the poor salesman just was so embarrassed. Here's this legend sitting in front of him, and they'd realized that they'd really screwed up on that guitar. Well, while I was there, they were also aware I was getting ready to go to New York, and they knew I was a Les Paul fan, so they were going to make an introduction so I could go by Club Iridium and meet Les. My son was going to be with me, so we were going to do photos, and I thought I also have to buy a guitar. And I'm at one of the best guitar places ever. And as I'm looking around at the Les Pauls, yeah, there's the Gold Top, there's the Starburst, but then there was this new guitar that was incredibly unique. And it was made out of the wood from the clubs in New Orleans that had been destroyed by Katrina. And it was the Music Rising series, where there were only 300 of them made. 200 of them autographed by the Edge, sold for 10 grand. I didn't need to spend that much money. But I wanted to buy something special that I knew Les could sign, and I had handed off to my son. And so when I saw the Music Rising, and there were several of them there, this particular one I looked at, and it was like the colors just jumped out. It was just a cool guitar, and it was incredibly unique. It was literally one out of 300. And so that was the guitar I bought. We stuck it in the case, stuck it in the overhead bin on a Southwest Airlines flight, flew, and Merle Haggard's people set up the meeting, for which I'm very grateful for. Les took wonderful time with us, picked up the guitar, checked it out, signed it, and then went on to rehearse, which we were allowed to stick around and basically get a private Les Paul concert. So this guitar is historical in many ways. It's historical because first it's Les Paul, but also because of what happened to some amazing clubs in New Orleans, and that wood coming out of just the heart of all those clubs being made into a guitar is truly unique. And it was the first one of that series that Les had seen. So he was really looking over and checking it out and inspecting it, and really loved the craftsmanship that had gone into that guitar.
And then talk to me a little bit more, Alan, about how you mentioned that this is the only one that's signed by him. So talk to me more about like how, this is truly a unique piece in that respect, as well as, you know, how tough as a collector, you definitely know how tough is it to get a personalized inscribed, signature as well as an inscription on Les Paul that from Les Paul.
So a lot of times you get an autograph of something, you may be standing outside, Letterman or a concert or what have you, and that's how you get your autograph. To be personally walked in by the team with Merle Haggard, and that introduction is just an amazing experience. I mean, the red carpet is rolled out. So a lot of the initial barriers that a celebrity might have, they all come down. So with this guitar, yeah, there are gold tops out there. There are Starburst out there. There are other guitars that Les has signed. But when this series came out, 200 of them gone right away because of the Edge. So there were only 100 left that had no autographs. So, and Gibson has followed this guitar as well, but this has the only signature from Les Paul on it. So it's one out of 300. It's a limited series on this particular guitar. It's the Music Rising series. So in so many ways, it's a collectible. The numbers on the back of the neck, it's a true collector's item, and it's kind of hard to part with, actually.
What I noticed too is that no guitar is the same in the series. So every single one of them, down to the imperfections that were put into it, every so you're looking at, not only is it a limited edition of 300, but only 100 unsigned, and then of all those 300, none are the same.
Yeah.
Then you have this signed by Les Paul. So the singular aspect of this, it's like limited edition to limit. It's the most esoteric limited edition you can find of a guitar that I've ever seen. And I've seen a bunch of different collectibles, but this is probably the most stunning example that I've seen in my all my time in this industry.
Just talk to me a little bit, Alan, about, how Les Paul and the Les Paul guitar influenced and so many huge musicians, right? Jimmy Page, Slash, Eric Clapton, like just and still big musicians today are just favoring this guitar over other models. Just talk to me just the how this guitar really just shaped the future and is still shaping the future of music.
So I may not be as knowledgeable on that aspect as a real guitar player, um, but you can't ignore in the Gibson lineup a Les Paul guitar. I mean, if you're looking at getting a guitar for yourself or to go on stage with, the Les Paul is the one that you're looking at. I mean, that's the one that everybody is playing, and that's the one that gives you that sound that really kicked it all off from the very beginning of rock and roll. So it's you're buying something that is, the best instrument available, has an amazing sound, um, and really with the history and the craftsmanship behind this. I mean, this was a special series, never to be done again. You can only get them from people who have them. Um, and when I walked into Guitar Center, and in fact, Guitar Center on Sunset said that's the only place you could get that entire series of guitars anyway. And I looked at every one they had, and when I looked at that guitar, the color jumped out, the quality jumped out. That was the one that I had to have out of all of them that they had available. And to be sitting there with Merle Haggard while we're going through all that is an experience that I'll never forget.
Great. No, that's perfect. I think that's exactly what we need for our first piece of content on the guitar. And let's move on, if you don't mind, to the copper mastering disc. So
No problem.
let's talk about this one. This is interesting, right? I mean, t tell me a little bit about copper mastering discs first, just so
Sure.
we could. I want to understand a little bit more exactly what a copper mastering disc is, what it does. That way we could kind of introduce that in the beginning of the video. So talk to me a little bit about that, please.
Sure thing. So, as a college student, I went to a place called Belmont University in Nashville. Nashville was great not only for the music industry, but all the aspects of that industry. So, the college was up on a hill just up from Music Row. And as you would drive Music Row, you'd see all of these places for mastering and everything else. And there's amazing talents in there that take what's done in the studio and then work to transfer that into what is going to be played on the radio and what consumers get. And in this time, copper mastering discs were the way that everybody started that process. So it would go from tape to being mastered to a disc. Now that disc is lathed, and it's actually lathed. It's a hard word to say in reverse because you take that and then you stamp the test pressing vinyl out of that, and that gives you a chance to see, is this the best sound we can get? How's it tracking? Is everything right? Was there anything wrong with the metal before the pressing? So that is the master right after the initial tape that's going to be going to the album. So with those, that's the beginning of the whole process. They're not consumer available. They usually don't make it out of the studios anyway. And this one's really special because what studio is more famous than Abbey Road?
None.
And that leads me to the second question. So yeah, I mean, studio number two, Abbey Road. Just talk to me about the significance of that studio and just the Beatles and just just how it was truly a one of a kind place for musicians and I mean, especially the Beatles. Just talk to me about just the story of Abbey Road Studio and Studio Two specifically.
As a young 22-year-old in London, I wanted to be able to do as much of the area as I could in the short time that I was going to be there. I had a great job where I was also working at UPI. I was the youngest foreign correspondent ever, and I got to do great stories for them from the ghost tours that they do to a pub tour. And then I also really wanted to get in and check out Abbey Road. And so I reached out and said I wanted to be able to do a story for them on UPI. I was welcomed in, had the great opportunity of sitting down with the studio director Fred Hennessy at the time, and we went over the entire history of the studio. One of the cool things I got to do, and it was, obviously the main reason I was going there is because of what's known as the Beatles studio, which is the #2 studio. Now, you've watched tons of movies that were recorded there, the audio recorded there. You've seen, there's tons of other bands that have been in studio too, but it's really known for the Beatles. I got to play the piano that was Paul McCartney's piano. And what I was told while I was there by Fred is that they were about to refurbish the studio for the first time in history. So,
And I have a question. So you were given the master disc, and then were you the one that framed it and presented it to your
yeah, I
parents?
framed it.
Okay.
I brought it back to me to Nashville, and gave it to one of the best framers in town that did all the stuff for the record labels. And at the same time, he was providing me a Rick Astley gold disc too, so I've got that on my wall also.
Oh, that's
Um,
neat.
yeah, and so I'm not giving that one up, literally. And
Sorry. That was a good joke.
thank you.
That was a really good joke.
But no, I had him do that, and there's one that has my name on it. There's one that I gave to my mom and dad, and that's the one. And since they're no longer here anymore, I figured it was a good time to let somebody else benefit from it.
So Alan, that kind of leads me into my next question, right? Like these are incredible items, and it's extremely tough to part with them. But at the end of the day, they're going to go to another collector that's going to cherish them just as much as you did. So talk to me a little bit about how, being a collector, it's a journey and an experience, and being able to share items with others is what is part of being a collector as well. Talk to me about that.
Um, One of the great things about being a collector, and hopefully avoiding being on the show hoarders, is that you get an amazing opportunity to be at the right place at the right time, get something that's unique. Um, for example, I have one album cover that was signed both by Merle Haggard and by Willie Nelson, and there are only 40 of those that were signed, and I know that because they were signed because the record guy from Columbia at the time had Willie sign it, and then he brought them over to Merle, and they were divided between the crews. So that's definitely a limited edition, and if we weren't there, we wouldn't have gotten it. There's also times when Merle was kind enough to let me be a photographer for him on some occasions, and so I have photos that he would sign. And in getting the prints done, I would have him sign it. I may have his son sign it. I may have the rest of the band sign it. And then there were some that were printed on metal that were distributed to friends of theirs, like Miranda Lambert. I have one photo that was actually I gave to the old man at the pawn shop in Las Vegas because I'd gone over and invited him to a show and he wasn't able to make it, and went back the next day and gave him one of my photos signed. And to know that one of my photos was hanging on the wall in the pawn shop in the old man's office was a pretty cool experience. So you get an opportunity not only to get really unique collectibles, but sometimes be able to create them and share them with your friends.
Great, great. And what I want to ask. So I guess let's do a kind of two closing. Like if let's go back to the guitar for a second. If you had to say in like a quick two or three, four sentences why someone absolutely needs to have this Les Paul in their collection, what would you say and why?
For this guitar, if you have any interest in music, if you have any interest in the legends, if you have any interest in making sure it's as collectible as possible, what else says, this has to be in my collection other than it's first off a Les Paul guitar. And it's been signed and held and revered by Les. I mean, he took it and really just admired this Music Rising series. Um, it was uniquely offered in the fact that you were only going to get this from the Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard, and 200 of them, were already autographed by the Edge, so those were really valuable. But out of all of that, this is the only one that Les put his signature on. So you've got a special numbered guitar made out of the wood from the best music clubs in New Orleans that unfortunately got destroyed by Katrina. That had never been done before in history. It will never be repeated in history. This is a one of a kind item. It is, as beautiful as it can be. And it really needs to go to the collector that wants that one thing that they can put in the wall or lean up against, their trophy case and say, nobody else will ever have this. And you can have another music rising guitar, but seriously, do you want Les Paul or do you want the Edge? There's 200 of those. There's one of these.
Great, excellent. And then let's switch gears now to the mastering disc. Same thing. I mean, as a collector, the Beatles, Abbey Road Studio. Why is this something that, if you're a serious collector, whether that's music, sports, like these are the Beatles, right? They are the I don't know, the New York Yankees of music, right? Like, talk to me about why, if you're a serious collector from any background, sports, pop culture, memorabilia, why do you have to have this record in your collection?
If you go to Abbey Road Studios today, you're going to find a gift shop. There wasn't a gift shop when I went to Abbey Road and interviewed their director for UPI Radio. Um, the record label that they use now for studio copies that they exchange is entirely different. It's a squared off logo, just as Abbey Road Studios. Back in the day, it was the Abbey Road. It was literally the two light posts and the crosswalk, which is what everybody knows Abbey Road for anyway. Those labels are of a different generation. This technology is of a different generation. This will not be repeated. These don't get out. You go out and you search, you're not going to find a mastering disc anywhere out there, nonetheless from Abbey Road. It's a truly unique item. You're not going to get it from anywhere else. It's marked a very special occasion for me, but also for the studio. The Beatles studio is getting ready to be renovated. Um, Here is Fred Hennessy, who is no longer around, but ran the studio at the time. Just an amazing individual, and it was amazing to be able to interview him and air a story on UPI Radio at the time. Studio is a really cool place. You don't normally have an opportunity to go in unless you have industry contacts. Even to this day, really difficult for me to get past the front door. But I got in, I got an interview. This is a tribute to that interview. It's a one of a kind item. These don't leave the studio. It's a copper mastering disc. It was created at Abbey Road. So if you're looking to hold something in your hand that was actually made at Abbey Road, there you go. Forget audio tape, forget the albums you buy in the store. This was made there. I mean, what better, how much better does a collector item get than that?